probably something worth noting is that there are a lot of hidden taxes. Excise tax on alcohol, for example, we pay a lot. And has anyone ever noticed or had that little bit of a mistake that you make when you buy a bottle of gin, for example, duty free, and then you go home and you decide to have a few gins, and suddenly you're feeling a bit tipsy, and you're, why is this? It's because alcohol is taxed on the percentage of proof that it is. Duty free alcohol doesn't just exclude the duty of GST. It excludes excise tax as well. So duty-free alcohol is a good 10% stronger proof than what you buy on the shelves. Yeah. Huh. So, and probably a few listeners are going, oh, that's why that happened to me that time.
Yeah. Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today we've got Matt Harris. He's back again to talk about why your Uber Eats bill is about to go up.
Managing Director of Lighthouse and Mr. Taxman, welcome back.
Good to be back. I love it when you refer to me as Taxman. My market value goes up incredibly with the ladies.
Let's talk about your GST. So, Matt, what are we here to talk about today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the app tax. Look, app tax is bandied around a lot, but actually not that much known about it considering it's in law now.
Yeah, and I was funny because when we started talking about this, I thought it was, Uber's not paying their way, the big guys aren't paying their, but actually that's not the case at all. We're not taxing Uber, we're going after the little guy.
That's right. So for many years now, the government has levied or collected GST on the non-tangible marketplace, for lack of a better way of putting it. But this tax is actually aimed at the people who are supplying the service. So think your Uber Eats driver. Think the person who owns an Airbnb. That they're renting out, 50% of the year. That's who this is hitting.
All right, Matt. Just so for everybody, what is app tax for those that don't know? Yeah.
So in short, prior to 1 April, if you earned under $60,000 per year and you had a taxable activity, which is basically every type of business with the exception of residential rental properties, you didn't have to register for GST and you didn't have to account for GST. Now, what that meant at a basic level is that you might still get charged GST on some of the things that you use. So Uber driver paying for petrol, for example, would be a really easy one to identify. They would pay GST on the petrol, but they wouldn't be able to claim the cost of that because they're not GST registered, but conversely, they wouldn't have to return the income. Same with someone who provided accommodation in a short-term residential dwelling. Long-term residential accommodation is exempt from GST. If you're under 60,000, you don't have to register for GST and you don't pay it. With the introduction of the app tax, what's going to happen is there's two ways it's going. So if you are not GST registered, what will happen now is that Airbnb or Uber, for example, are going to be charging 15% on top or wrapped up into your delivery fee, your accommodation fee. It's a little bit complicated. They're then going to pass on 8.5% to you, and that is an approximation of the expenses that you would have been able to claim if you were GST registered. 6.5%, which is the balance of the 15, is going to be passed on to inland revenue. So that's if you're not registered. So in effect, you still won't have to do anything. You're not GST registered, but there is a higher cost to you in that you are going to be 6.5% worse off, theoretically, because that 15% is going to have to come from somewhere.
And naturally, so those costs will be just passed on to the consumer, right?
100%. Uber Eats is going to become more expensive. Accommodation Airbnb is going to become more expensive. So that's one side of the coin. If you are already GST registered, you are required to notify the platform that you're GST registered. And what's going to happen is that the process is going to change a little bit for you. So previously, if you're GST registered, you would have to account for that GST in your own return, and that would just be a normal rated supply. Now what's going to happen is, first of all, Uber Eats and accommodation is still going to be more expensive because before you were getting an inclusive amount, now it's going to be exclusive or plus GST. And the provider, are going to zero rate that income through to inland revenue for you, which I think is quite clever from the government. It's going to stop any GST leakage. So quite often there's a big difference between filing a GST return and paying a GST return. They're going to ensure there's no revenue leakage, which I think is quite clever. you are then going to put that in your GST return as zero rated income. So you still account for it. Not much is going to change for you, I don't think, other than the fact that the margin theoretically on your service is going to drop.
Will shrink. Yeah.
Yeah.
So James, before we continue, I have got a special announcement.
Have you started sticking to your budget?
Absolutely not.
You finally made it as an after-hours DJ.
I wish. And the thing is, we have got a brand new podcast partner, Partners Life.
You mean the award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured?
Yep, they're also a New Zealand operated company and they are passionate about increasing financial literacy amongst Kiwis.
Sounds like a great match. Where can I learn more about them?
Check out their website in our show notes below.
Really thought DJ Magic Mike was going to be a global sensation for a second. So we talked about the cost being passed on to the consumer. So then we went down quite a interesting route preparing for this episode, going, well, I wonder how much each of us spend on Uber Eats and then how much it will go up by going forward. So we all have pulled, including Ravi and Georgia behind the cameras, how much we spent on Uber Eats for the last 2 years. Were you surprised by the numbers?
I thought mine would be a bit higher, to be honest. So let's kick it off. Ravi, he clocked in at 2,500 for the last 2 years. Very respectable. Georgia, 3,100. And then myself at 3,700. Now, I thought mine was going to be 5K plus. Easy.
And I thought James would be lower.
Yeah.
Financial advisor.
Yeah.
Good with money. Responsible man.
Yeah.
So Mike was 3,700. I was 7.5 grand. And
I mean, I was never going to win this.
no. Matt, with the support of his partner Emma, have got to 15 grand over the last 2 years.
Yes, and I do want to blame Emma Louise because she eats really healthy. And healthy food costs more money than junk food.
Yeah.
It just does. It's a good 50% more than junk food.
And Uber Eats, when we downloaded the data, was really helpful in itemizing every single thing that we have ordered. So mine was very consistent. It was a mild butter chicken and a butter naan. And they give you the time in the day, and it's literally just Sunday morning, 9 a.m., mild butter chicken and naan. And it was just like butter chicken, butter chicken, butter chicken, butter chicken. It was loco.
Mine split between the time I ordered. So if we're ordering at maybe 6 o'clock on a normal night of the week, Thai food is pretty popular. A little bit of sizzling beef, maybe a couple of dumplings. If you're seeing an order at Friday,
is any of that Thai? Sizzling beef and dumplings. Isn't Thai like a pad Thai?
Pad Thai is Thai as well. So
Okay,
sizzling
cool.
beef.
Sorry,
You're
sorry,
right.
sorry.
There is. It is also a Chinese dish. But lots of different countries can produce similar dishes. But then if you go to a Friday night or a Saturday night around midnight, granted, doesn't happen very often because your boy likes to Houdini and run away and go home, then go to bed. Pizza, like 1,000 sides and some desserts.
Yeah.
That will be the secondary order.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And nothing good happens after midnight, so well done for leaving.
Yeah.
Mine is all over the show, right? Because I don't really eat like after about like 8 or 9 o'clock, especially if I'm out drinking. So I'm not really the 1 a.m. Uber Eats guy. I'm either the weekday can't be bothered cooking guy, in which case it's usually, and Emma Louise and I often have different orders, so we'll do that thing where you order from 2 and it comes. She goes low carb kitchen. So my 15,000, remember that's 2 people.
Yeah.
She goes low carb kitchen. I quite often go Vietnamese, like Eat Me or something, like a chicken vermicelli or Hanson.
I'm hungry
Auckland
now.
Institution, hungry also. Or I'll go completely the other way and it's like fried chicken and burgers.
Yeah.
Just
A
that is
Sal's
it.
pizza.
And that's like Sunday afternoon or Friday night.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to quickly defend my position with my total order amount. I think it's because I'm more of a homebody and don't go out to eat as often,
Whereas
while the
we go
two
out.
of you
Yeah,
go out
that's
to
true.
eat.
Yeah.
So just in my defense.
Yeah.
So should we total the difference, how much more we're going to pay now with this new tax in place?
Yep.
So maybe if we just total the total additional costs across the 5 of us. All right, so on roughly $30,000, that's when you total it, that's a lot scarier between the 5 of us. half of the 5 of us is
Yeah.
you, by the way.
Yeah.
Just to be clear,
Yes.
and then that's not your fault. That's Emma's fault.
Yeah,
Her
Just
fault.
yeah.
That's
to,
her fault. Yep.
it's, hard to take responsibility for
Yeah.
yourself. So on that $30,000 with this new tax, we'll be spending about an extra $4,500
Yep.
over that 2-year period, which is quite a lot of money.
It is quite a lot of money, and especially in the environment we were in, where costs have been increasing for every household in New Zealand. And the app tax was meant to have been abandoned. So Labor have thought up the app tax, and National previously, as part of their campaign, had pretty much abandoned it. So it was a bit of a surprise to see it come in still. And what continues to surprise me, actually, and under the Labor government started it, but National government by no means are doing any better at it, is consultation prior to implementation of rules. So we don't have any real understanding of how these are to be applied at the low level. At the high level, I think most accountants understand now that it's how it works, but there's no legislation that I could find anyway, no working papers, no consultation. So
I know Mike and I, we're looking for them all the time, right? We're looking for these consultation papers on tax on a Friday night going, oh, this is so sad. I want to read my tax paper.
yeah, well, sometimes if you need something to do,
Yeah.
or you need a good sleep.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing to point out here is you kind of question like the hidden taxes in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
We are levied on a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. By the time the good gets to you, there's like 4,000 taxes that have been applied to it.
Yeah, I think that's valid, and probably something worth noting is that there are a lot of hidden taxes. Excise tax on alcohol, for example, we pay a lot. And has anyone ever noticed or had that little bit of a mistake that you make when you buy a bottle of gin, for example, duty free, and then you go home and you decide to have a few gins, and suddenly you're feeling a bit tipsy, and why is this? It's because alcohol is taxed on the percentage of proof that it is. Duty free alcohol doesn't just exclude the duty of GST, it excludes excise tax as well. So duty-free alcohol is a good 10% stronger proof than what you buy on the
Really?
shelves. Yeah. So, and probably a few listeners are going, oh, that's why that happened to me that time.
Yeah.
Petrol,
Or you're reckless and drink too much.
Yeah.
Right? One or the other. Yeah.
Hey, my brother has a great saying, look in the mirror, not out the window. Anyway, petrol is taxed. You are taxed by the government when you pay rates, for example. So there's lots of hidden taxes. That's just another one.
Yeah, it begs the question a little bit, why bother? Like with this one, I feel like people are trying to just get, doing anything, side hustle, something to try and just get themselves a little bit better. And instead of, as a country or a government, instead of rewarding that, we're going, whoa, here's another opportunity, just cut a little bit out for us.
Hey, and I think I've used this quote before, and if I haven't, man, I really should have. Winston Churchill had a really great quote. He said, trying to tax a nation into prosperity is like standing in a bucket and trying to lift yourself up by the handle. And I do feel like New Zealand increasingly is losing its way. And I understand the government needs revenue. A lot of money was spent during COVID. And but when do you get to a point where the tax is crippling the productivity and people move into that mode where they have to try and survive rather than be productive, think bigger?
Well, it's the same thing as like a business, right? There's two ways to have more money left over at the end. You can cut expenses, which is depressing, which might be the additional tax, or you can grow your way out of it. And that's essentially the quote with Winston Churchill, right? It's much more fun and much more prosperous for a country to grow rather than continue to tax their society.
To lift productivity. And it is hard for people out there who are struggling to go into work and be productive because they've got other things on their mind, and rightly so.
All right, Matt, what other points do you want to hit?
Yeah, so I just want to finish up by saying if you are an Uber driver or someone providing short-term accommodation, and there are other apps out there, but those are the two that we deal with commonly in our office, you need to let the platform know your GST registration status. So you need to log in. There's a couple places that you have to put it, and you have to let them know whether you're GST registered or not GST registered. If you don't do that, what can happen is that it can get treated incorrectly. If you receive the 8.5% credit, for example, when you're not GST registered, you have to return, when you are GST registered, you have to return that back to Inland Revenue. And worth noting, which probably won't apply to our listeners, if you are a large accommodation provider, so turning over, so you're a hotel, for example, you can opt out. or you provide more than 2,000 nights accommodation in a year, you can opt out as well. But if that's not you, make sure you reach out to me or one of the team to have a talk about this if you don't understand it or you're worried about your margins, for example.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there so we can go and get a takeaway.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Partners Life, for sponsoring us. Thanks, Matt, for your time. Please make sure to subscribe, review, like, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.